The morning sun cast long shadows across the bridge of the U-East horizon as Captain Jake Morrison reviewed the day's mission reports. His ship floated peacefully in the void between star systems, its sleek hull reflecting the distant light of a blue giant star. Jake had been exploring the galaxy for 12 years now, and he still felt wonder every time he looked out at the endless sea of stars. "Captain, we're getting a transmission from the colony on Meridian 4, said Lieutenant Lisa Wright from her station. She was young for a tactical officer, barely 30, with bright eyes that had never seen real combat. Her job was to manage the ship's defensive systems, but in all her years of service, she had never fired a weapon at another living being. Jake nodded and walked over to the main screen. The face of Governor Martinez appeared, smiling warmly. Behind him, Jake could see the green fields and simple buildings of the human agricultural colony. Children played in the background, their laughter carrying through the communication link. "Captain Morrison, thank you for coming," the governor said. "We've been having some minor issues with our water purification systems. Nothing dangerous, but our engineer thinks it might be beyond our current expertise." This was typical for human colonies in the Outer Rim. They were peaceful places focused on farming and research. Most had minimal defensive capabilities because they simply didn't need them. The galaxy had been at peace for decades, and humans were known throughout the Federation as helpers and peacekeepers. "We'll be there in 6 hours," Jake replied. "Chief Collins will take a look at your systems. If anyone can fix it, he can." Pete Collins looked up from his engineering station and grinned. He was a big man with gentle hands, the kind of person who could repair the most complex machinery with the patience of a teacher explaining math to a child. Pete had spent the last 5 years traveling from colony to colony, fixing problems and training local engineers. He never charged for his services, saying that helping people was payment enough. The horizon changed course toward Meridian 4, its engines humming quietly through the ship's hull. Jake settled back into his captain's chair and pulled up the latest reports from Federation headquarters on Earth. The news was mostly good. Trade agreements were being signed, new colonies were thriving, and scientific discoveries were being shared freely between species. There was one item that made Jake frown slightly. The Zephyrian Collective had been making noise again about human expansion in the Outer Rim. They claimed that humans were taking too much space, growing too fast, becoming too influential in Federation politics. It wasn't the first time Jake had heard such complaints, and it probably wouldn't be the last. The Zephyrians were a proud species from the galactic core. They had been spacefaring for thousands of years before humans even discovered fire. Their technology was advanced, their military was strong, and they had little patience for what they saw as primitive species from the galaxy's edge. They tolerated humans in the Federation, but just barely. "Lieutenant Wright, pull up the files on Zephyrian activity in this sector," Jake said. Lisa's fingers danced across her console. "There have been 3 incidents in the past month, Captain. 2 merchant vessels reported being stopped and searched by Zephyrian patrols. Both were carrying human goods. The searches were legal under Federation law, but aggressive." Jake rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Human merchant ships were often targeted for searches because they carried the most diverse cargoes. Humans traded with everyone, from the insectoid cricks to the energy beings of the Stellar Collective. This made human ships valuable sources of intelligence, but it also made them targets for harassment. "Any violence?" Jake asked. "No, sir. The Zephyrians were rude, but stayed within legal bounds." The 3rd incident was different, though. A Zephyrian battlecruiser buzzed the colony on New Geneva, came within 1,000 kilometers of the orbital platform before turning away. Jake's frown deepened. Buzzing a colony was a classic intimidation tactic. It wasn't illegal, but it was definitely unfriendly. New Geneva was a research station with a population of about 8,000. They studied plant genetics and developed new crops for frontier worlds. They had no military value whatsoever. "Captain," Pete called from his station, "I'm reading the technical specs for Meridian 4's water systems. Looks like a simple calibration issue. Should take me about 3 hours to fix once we arrive." "Good. While you're working on that, I want to have a talk with Governor Martinez about colony security." Pete looked surprised. "Security? Captain, it's a farming colony. What do they need security for?" Jake pointed to the star map on the main screen. "Look at the shipping routes, Pete. Meridian 4 sits right on the main trade path between the core worlds and the outer rim. If someone wanted to disrupt human commerce, it would be a perfect target." Lisa turned in her chair to face Jake. "Sir, are you thinking the Zephyrians might actually attack a civilian colony? That would be an act of war." "I don't think they're planning anything that dramatic," Jake replied. "But I've been reading their political broadcasts. They're getting more aggressive in their language about human expansion. They call us upstart primitives and Deathworld savages who don't know their place." The term Deathworld always made Jake smile a little. Earth was indeed a dangerous planet by galactic standards. Most inhabited worlds in the galaxy were gentler places than Earth, with lighter gravity, more stable weather, and fewer predators. Humans had evolved in a harsh environment that had made them stronger, faster, and more adaptable than most other species. But humans had never used these advantages to dominate or conquer. When they joined the Federation 50 years ago, they had chosen to be partners rather than rulers. They shared their technology freely, helped other species solve problems, and served as peacekeepers in disputes between worlds. Ambassador Claire Davis exemplified this approach. She represented humanity in the Federation Council on the capital world of Prima. Claire was a small woman with a soft voice, but she had resolved more conflicts through patient diplomacy than most species had. Through centuries of warfare, she believed that any problem could be solved if people just talked to each other long enough. The Horizon dropped out of hyperspace near Meridian 4 6 hours later. The planet hung before them like a green and blue jewel, its surface covered with vast agricultural fields and small cities. The orbital platform that served as the colony's spaceport was a simple structure, designed for cargo handling rather than defense. Governor Martinez met them at the airlock with his usual warm smile. He was a weathered man in his 60s who had spent most of his life growing food for frontier colonies. His handshake was firm, and his eyes were kind. "Captain Morrison, Chief Collins, Lieutenant Wright, welcome to Meridian 4. I hope you don't mind, but I've arranged a small dinner in your honor tonight." The colonists wanted to show their appreciation. Jake smiled. This was typical of human colonies. They treated visitors like family, sharing their food and their stories. It was one of the things that made humans popular throughout the galaxy, even among species that didn't particularly like them. Pete immediately went to work on the water purification systems while Jake and Lisa toured the colony. The farm stretched for kilometers in every direction, filled with crops that would feed dozens of worlds. The colonists were proud of their work and eager to show off their latest innovations. But as Jake walked through the peaceful streets, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing in the galaxy. The Zephyrians were becoming more bold, more aggressive. Other species were starting to take sides, choosing between the old powers of the galactic core and the new influence of humanity. That evening, as Jake sat at dinner with the colonists, listening to their stories and sharing their laughter, he made a mental note to recommend increased security patrols for the outer rim colonies. It was probably unnecessary, but Jake had learned long ago that it was better to be prepared for trouble than to be surprised by it. He had no idea how prophetic that thought would prove to be. The emergency alarm shrieked through the corridors of Outer. Rim Command Station, as Commander Ryan Bell ran toward the communications center. He had been reviewing supply reports when the first distress signal came in from New Haven Colony. Initial transmission was garbled, filled with static and what sounded like explosions in the background. "Commander Bell to the bridge," he called into his comm unit as he sprinted up the stairs. His heart was pounding, not from the run, but from the fear in the colonist's voice he had heard in that brief transmission. Lieutenant Karen Stone met him at the bridge entrance, her face pale. "Sir, we've lost contact with New Haven. The last transmission came in 14 minutes ago." It was just screaming and then nothing. Ryan felt his stomach drop. New Haven was a peaceful agricultural colony of 50,000 people, mostly families, with children. They grew food for 6 other worlds and ran a small university that studied alien plant life. The colony had no military installations, no strategic resources, nothing that would make it a target for attack. "Get me everything we have on New Haven's location and status," Ryan ordered as he moved to the main console. "Contact the Horizon, the Mercury, and any other ships in the area. I want a response team assembled in 30 minutes. The main screen lit up with data about New Haven. The colony sat on a fertile world with 2 small moons and a stable yellow sun. Population: 47,892 civilians. Defenses: 1 orbital platform with basic shields and communication equipment. Military presence: none. "Sir," called Ensign Martinez from the sensor station, "I'm detecting multiple Zephyrian battle cruisers in the New Haven system. At least 6 ships, possibly more." Ryan's blood turned cold. 6 Zephyrian battle cruisers was enough firepower to destroy a dozen colonies like New Haven. This wasn't a raid or a show of force. This was a full military assault on defenseless civilians. "Launch all available ships immediately," Ryan commanded. "Send a priority message to Federation Command and to Earth. Tell them we have a confirmed attack on a human civilian colony by Zephyrian forces." The next 4 hours were the longest of Ryan's life. His small fleet of 3 patrol ships raced toward New Haven at maximum speed, but the colony was 18 light years away. Even at full emergency speed, they wouldn't arrive for another 6 hours. Reports trickled in from long-range sensors and automated monitoring stations. The Zephyrian fleet had surrounded New Haven and begun a systematic bombardment of the planet's surface. They weren't targeting military installations, because there weren't any. They were targeting schools, hospitals, residential areas, and farms. "Captain," Morrison's voice crackled over the communication system from the Horizon. "Commander Bell, we're 4 hours out from New Haven. What's the tactical situation?" Ryan stared at the sensor readings on his screen. "Captain, it's not a battle. It's a massacre. The Zephyrians are targeting civilian areas with precision strikes. From what we can tell, they're not trying to capture anything. They're trying to kill as many people as possible." There was silence on the communication channel for a long moment. When Jake Morrison spoke again, his voice was different. "Colder. Understood, Commander. The Horizon is increasing to maximum emergency speed. We'll be there in 3 hours and 20 minutes. Ryan wished he could do more than just race across space while innocent people died. He thought about the families he had met on New Haven during his last visit. Governor Patricia Walsh had shown him around the colony's new school, where children from 6 different human worlds learned together. Dr. Carl Jung had explained his research on developing crops that could grow in the harsh soil of frontier planets. The Zephyrians were destroying all of that, not for military advantage or strategic gain, but to send a message, to show the galaxy that humans could be hurt, that their colonies could be erased from existence. When Ryan's fleet finally arrived at New Haven, the attack was over. The Zephyrian ships were gone, leaving behind only destruction. The orbital platform was a twisted wreck of metal and plastic. The planet's surface was scarred with crater marks where cities and farms had once flourished. Ryan's ship, the Defender, entered orbit cautiously. His sensors swept the planet's surface, looking for survivors. What they found made him sick to his stomach. "Commander," whispered Ensign Martinez, "I'm reading massive civilian casualties. Entire city blocks have been leveled. The main hospital is gone. The primary school is gone. Most of the residential areas are just rubble." Ryan closed his eyes and forced himself to breathe slowly. He had been a soldier for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like this. The Zephyrians hadn't just attacked New Haven. They had tried to wipe it from existence. "Launch all rescue shuttles," he ordered. "Get medical teams down there immediately. Start searching for survivors." The rescue operation took 18 hours. Ryan's teams pulled 3,847 survivors from the wreckage of New Haven Colony. Most were injured. Many were children who had lost their families. The final death toll was 44,045 people. Captain Morrison arrived with the horizon just as the rescue teams were finishing their work. Jake's face was like stone as he reviewed the casualty reports. Chief Collins, the gentle engineer who fixed water purifiers and taught children about technology, stared at the ruins of the colony with tears streaming down his face. Lieutenant Wright, who had never fired a weapon in anger, stood at her tactical station with her hands clenched into fists. Her voice was steady, but cold when she spoke. "Captain, I'm detecting Zephyrian energy signatures in the debris field. They used military-grade plasma weapons against civilian targets. This wasn't a quick strike. They took their time." The full scope of the atrocity became clear as rescue teams explored the ruined colony. The Zephyrians had landed ground troops to hunt down survivors who had hidden in shelters. They had systematically destroyed hospitals, schools, and emergency services, first making rescue impossible. They had broadcast the attack on military frequencies, making sure the human forces would hear the screams of the dying. Ryan stood in the ruins of New Haven Central Plaza, where a monument to peace had once welcomed visitors from across the galaxy. The monument was gone now, replaced by a crater 20 meters wide. The inscription that had once read, "In peace we grow," was buried under tons of rubble and ash. His communication device buzzed with an incoming transmission from Earth. The face of President Kevin Gray appeared on the small screen, and Ryan could see that the news had already reached the human homeworld. "Commander Bell, I want a full report on the situation at New Haven. Leave nothing out." Ryan began his report, describing the attack in clinical detail. As he spoke, he watched President Gray's expression change from concern to shock to something much darker. When Ryan finished, there was a long silence. "Mr. President," Ryan said carefully, "the survivors are asking when help will arrive. They want to know if the Federation will protect them from future attacks." President Gray was quiet for another moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a tone that Ryan had never heard from a human leader before. "Commander Bell, help is coming, but not the kind of help they expect. For 50 years, humanity has chosen peace. We have chosen restraint. We have chosen mercy. The Zephyrian Collective has made it clear that they view these choices as weakness." The president paused, and Ryan could see Federation Council members gathering behind him. The emergency session was beginning. "They have made a grave miscalculation about the nature of humanity, Commander. The survivors of New Haven will be protected. But more than that, they will be avenged. The galaxy is about to learn that there is a difference between choosing not to fight and being unable to fight." The transmission ended, leaving Ryan standing alone in the ruins of New Haven. Around him, rescue workers continued pulling bodies from the wreckage. Children cried for parents who would never answer. Doctors worked frantically to save the wounded with inadequate supplies. Ryan looked up. At the sky, where the horizon hung in orbit like a guardian angel that had arrived too late. He thought about the Zephyrian ships that had done this terrible thing, probably already back in their home systems, celebrating their victory over defenseless humans. They had wanted to send a message with the destruction of New Haven. They had succeeded. But Ryan suspected that the message humanity would send back would be very different from what the Zephyrians expected. The age of human mercy was ending. The age of human justice was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be same again. The transformation began 72 hours after New Haven burned. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon, watching as military supply ships attached new weapon systems to his exploration vessel. The peaceful ship that had spent years helping colonies and conducting scientific research was becoming something entirely different. "Captain, the new plasma cannons are online," reported Chief Collins from his engineering station. Pete's voice was flat and emotionless, nothing like the cheerful engineer who had fixed water purifiers just days before. His gentle hands now worked with deadly precision, installing weapons that violated 3 different Federation treaties on acceptable force levels. Jake nodded without taking his eyes off the tactical display. The horizon now carried enough firepower to level a small moon. More importantly, it carried weapons specifically designed to penetrate Zephyrian shields and armor. Human engineers had spent decades studying Zephyrian technology in the name of peaceful cooperation. Now that knowledge would be used for a very different purpose. "Lieutenant Wright, status on the targeting systems?" Lisa looked up from her console. Her bright eyes, which had once sparkled with curiosity about the universe, now held something cold and calculating. She had spent the past 3 days studying Zephyrian battle tactics, ship designs, and strategic weaknesses. She knew more about killing Zephyrians than most military officers in the galaxy. "All systems green, Captain. I've programmed the targeting computers with data from the attack on New Haven. We know exactly which ships were there and what weapons they used. If we encounter any of those vessels, the computer will identify them automatically." Jake turned to face his crew. These were the same people who had shared dinner with colonists on Meridian 4 less than a week ago. They had laughed with children and helped fix broken machinery. Now they were preparing for war with the cold efficiency of born killers. But that was the thing about humans that the galaxy had never understood. They weren't naturally peaceful. They were naturally adaptable. For 50 years, they had adapted to be diplomats, explorers, and helpers, because that was what the galaxy needed. Now the galaxy needed something else, and humans were adapting again. "All ships, this is Admiral Hayes, aboard the UES Retribution. We are beginning Operation Reckoning." Susan Hayes had been promoted to Admiral just 2 days ago. Her previous rank of captain hadn't been sufficient for the fleet that Earth was assembling. She had commanded exploration vessels for 20 years, always choosing negotiation over confrontation. But the woman speaking over the communication channel was not the same person who had once spent 6 months mediating a trade dispute between 2 alien species. "Our mission is simple," Admiral Hayes continued. "We will locate and destroy every Zephyrian military installation, ship, and weapon in this sector. We will do this quickly, efficiently, and with extreme prejudice. The rules of engagement have changed. Any Zephyrian vessel that does not immediately surrender will be destroyed. Any installation that shows hostile intent will be eliminated." Jake checked his ship's status one more time. The Horizon was part of a fleet of 37 human vessels, all recently converted from peaceful purposes to instruments of war. Cargo ships now carried enough missiles to destroy entire fleets. Hospital ships had been equipped with jamming systems that could blind enemy sensors. Even the diplomatic courier ships now mounted weapons that could crack a planet's crust. The first target was Kepler Station, a Zephyrian forward operating base on the edge of human space. Intelligence reports indicated that at least 2 of the ships responsible for New Haven were stationed there. The base also coordinated Zephyrian patrols in the Outer Rim, making it a legitimate military target. "All ships, jump to hyperspace on my mark," Admiral Hayes commanded. "Remember, we are not conquerors. We are not invaders. We are the consequence of their actions. Mark." The human fleet vanished into hyperspace, leaving empty space behind them. They moved with a coordination that surprised even their own commanders. Human ships had been designed for exploration and trade, but they adapted to military formation flying as if they had been doing it for centuries. Jake sat in his captain's chair as the Horizon raced through hyperspace toward its target. He thought about the last transmission from New Haven, the screams of dying children that the Zephyrians had broadcast across military frequencies. They had wanted humans to hear those screams. They had wanted to cause terror and despair. Instead, they had awakened something that had been sleeping in human DNA for millions of years. Humans were predators from a death world, creatures who had survived by being stronger, smarter, and more ruthless than anything else on their planet. They had learned to cooperate and build civilizations, but the predator was still there, waiting beneath the surface. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. Immediately, sensors detected 12 Zephyrian warships in orbit around the main station. It was a significant military presence, designed to intimidate anyone who might challenge Zephyrian authority in the region. "This is Admiral Hayes to Kepler Station. You have 30 seconds to surrender unconditionally. Any ship that attempts to flee or fight will be destroyed. This is your only warning." The Zephyrian response came quickly. Their fleet commander, a veteran named Zix Carr, opened a communication channel with obvious contempt in his voice. "Foolish humans, you dare threaten the might of the Zephyrian collective? Your weak ships and primitive weapons are no match for our superior technology. Withdraw now, or face the same fate as your pathetic colony." Jake felt something shift inside his chest. It wasn't anger exactly. It was something colder, more focused. Lieutenant Wright looked up from her station with an expression that would have terrified any Zephyrian who saw it. "Captain, I have target locks on all enemy vessels. Shall I open fire?" Admiral Hayes' voice came over the fleet communication channel, calm and emotionless. "All ships, weapons free? Show them what humans do to child killers." The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. The Zephyrian ships, for all their advanced technology and superior firepower, had never faced an enemy that fought like humans. They were used to combat between civilized species, where battles followed predictable patterns and had clear rules. Humans didn't follow the rules. They used tactics that other species considered unsporting or even barbaric. They targeted life support systems instead of weapons. They attacked from multiple directions simultaneously. They used their ships as weapons when their guns ran out of ammunition. The Horizon, under Jake's command, demonstrated the difference between human and alien thinking. Instead of engaging the enemy ships directly, Jake used his superior knowledge of asteroid mining to turn nearby space rocks into guided missiles. Chief Collins had modified the ship's tractors, beams to grab asteroids and hurl them at enemy vessels with devastating accuracy. Wright coordinated the attack with the cold precision of a computer, but with the creative unpredictability of a human mind. She didn't just target enemy ships. She targeted their escape routes, their communication arrays, and their ability to call for help. When the battle was over, not a single Zephyrian ship had managed to send a distress signal. Kepler Station itself fell in less than 5 minutes. The massive structure, which had intimidated alien traders for decades, was reduced to scattered debris by concentrated human firepower. The weapons that had bombarded New Haven were turned to scrap metal floating in the void. When the shooting stopped, there were no Zephyrian survivors. The human fleet had not captured prisoners or accepted surrenders. They had eliminated a threat with the methodical thoroughness of exterminators dealing with dangerous pests. Admiral Hayes opened a communication channel to the fleet. Well done. Kepler Station has been neutralized. All enemy forces in this system have been eliminated. We are moving to the next target. Jake looked at the debris field that had once been a Zephyrian military base. His crew had destroyed ships and weapons. With the same calm efficiency they had once used to repair damaged equipment. The transformation was complete. "Captain," said Chief Collins from his station, "I'm detecting a Zephyrian communication buoy about 2 light years from here. It probably recorded our attack and will transmit the data to their command structure." Jake smiled for the first time since New Haven. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Good. Let them see what we did here. Let them understand that this is just the beginning. The galaxy wanted to know what humans are really capable of when we stop being nice. The human fleet regrouped and jumped to hyperspace, heading for their next target. Behind them, automated buoys recorded the destruction and began transmitting the data across the galaxy. The news would reach every major civilization within days. The gentle giants from Earth were no longer gentle. The Deathworlders had remembered what they truly were, and the galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. 3 weeks after Kepler Station fell, the human war machine had become something that terrified both enemies and allies. Admiral Hayes stood in the command center of the UES Retribution, surrounded by holographic displays showing the destruction of 17 Zephyrian military installations. Each victory had been more decisive than the last, and each battle had taught humanity new ways to kill their enemies. Captain Morrison's fleet had eliminated 4 separate Zephyrian patrol groups. In the past week alone, the Horizon, once a peaceful exploration vessel, now carried a reputation that made enemy commanders evacuate entire star systems when it appeared on their sensors. Jake's tactical innovations had become standard throughout the human fleet, turning merchant vessels into predators and research ships into instruments of war. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian High Command," reported Communications Officer Danny Miller. His voice was steady, but everyone on the bridge could hear the tension beneath it. The Zephyrians had been silent for 2 weeks, presumably trying to understand how their superior military forces were being systematically destroyed by humans they had considered primitive. Admiral Hayes nodded. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of Supreme Commander Vexthul, the highest-ranking military officer in the Zephyrian Collective. His reptilian features were twisted with a mixture of rage and something that might have been fear. "Human Admiral Hayes, I demand to know why you continue this unprovoked aggression against the Zephyrian Collective. We are both members of the Federation. Your actions violate dozens of interstellar treaties." Susan Hayes looked at the Zephyrian commander with eyes that held no warmth whatsoever. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who had learned to speak for an entire species. "Supreme Commander, let me clarify something for you. This is not unprovoked aggression. This is justice. Your forces deliberately targeted civilian populations on New Haven. They murdered 44,000 innocent people, including children. Every military installation we have destroyed was involved in planning, supporting, or executing that massacre." Vexthul's scales shifted color, a sign of agitation in his species. The attack on New Haven was a legitimate military operation against an enemy colony. Your people were expanding too quickly, taking resources that belonged to older, more established civilizations. The silence on the human bridge was absolute. Every officer present had lost friends or family members at New Haven. Admiral Hayes let the silence stretch for a long moment before responding. "I see. You consider the murder of children to be legitimate military action. Thank you for clarifying. Your position Supreme Commander. It makes our next action much easier to justify. The transmission ended abruptly as Hayes cut the connection. She turned to her tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Bobby Shaw, who had been studying star charts while the conversation continued. "Bobby, show me the tactical analysis of Zarian Prime." The main screen shifted to display a detailed map of the Zephyrian homeworld's primary military installation. Zarian Prime was not the Zephyrian homeworld itself, but a massive fortress built on their largest moon. It contained the collective's primary fleet base, their military academy, and the command centers that coordinated Zephyrian forces throughout the galaxy. Admiral, Zarian Prime is defended by 47 capital ships and over 200 smaller vessels, Bobby reported. The installation itself is protected by planetary shields that can withstand sustained bombardment from a dozen dreadnoughts. Intelligence estimates suggest that attacking this target would require at least 60% of our total fleet strength. Hayes studied the tactical display with the cold calculation of a chess master planning her next move. The human fleet had grown to over 100 ships in the past 3 weeks, as more vessels were converted from civilian to military use. But even with that force, Zarian Prime would be a difficult target. "What's the status of the new weapon systems?" she asked. Chief Scientist Dr. Lara Kim stepped forward from her station near the rear of the bridge. Lavra had been a peaceful researcher just a month ago, studying alien biology and developing new medical treatments. Now she designed weapons specifically engineered to kill Zephyrians as efficiently as possible. "Admiral, the plasma disruptors are ready for field testing. They're designed to overload Zephyrian shields by matching their exact frequency patterns. We also have the new kinetic penetrators, which should be able to punch through their armor like it was paper." Hayes nodded. The transformation of human science from peaceful research to military application had been remarkable. Doctors who had once saved alien lives now developed poisons that targeted specific biological systems. Engineers who had built hospitals now designed weapons that could crack planets. "Commander Bell, report on ground force preparations." Ryan Bell had been promoted to full commander after his rescue efforts at New Haven. He now led the human ground assault teams, soldiers who had learned to fight in environments that would kill other species. His forces had already proven themselves in 3 separate battles, demonstrating why humans had evolved on a death world. "Admiral, we have 15,000 ground troops ready for deployment. They're equipped with environmental suits that allow them to operate in toxic atmospheres, extreme temperatures, and high radiation zones. Our soldiers can fight in conditions that would incapacitate most other species." This was the key advantage that humans possessed. They had evolved on a planet that was constantly trying to kill them. Earth's gravity was heavier than most inhabited worlds. Its weather was more violent, its diseases more deadly, and its predators more dangerous. Humans were built to survive in hostile environments, and they used that advantage ruthlessly in combat. "Excellent. Begin preparations for the assault on Zarian Prime. I want every ship ready for combat operations within 12 hours." As the bridge crew began their preparations, Hayes allowed herself a moment to think about how much had changed since New Haven. The woman who had once spent months negotiating peaceful solutions to minor trade disputes was now planning the most devastating military assault in recent galactic history. The transformation hadn't been easy. Every human commander had struggled with the shift from protector to destroyer, from helper to killer. But they had made the change because they understood something that the rest of the galaxy was only beginning to grasp. Humans had never been naturally peaceful. They had been naturally protective. For 50 years, humans had protected the galaxy's peace by choosing restraint. They had protected other species by sharing their technology and knowledge. They had protected trade routes by serving as neutral mediators in disputes. But when the Zephyrians attacked New Haven, they had made it clear that they viewed human protection as weakness. Now humans were protecting the galaxy in a different way. They were making sure that no other species would ever again mistake human kindness for inability to fight. The Battle of Zerion Prime began 18 hours later. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, with Admiral Hayes' flagship leading the assault. The Zephyrians were ready for them, their massive fleet deployed in defensive positions around their fortress moon. This is Admiral Hayes to all ships. Remember, we are not here to conquer territory or claim resources. We are here to demonstrate that actions have consequences. Show them what happens to those who murder human children. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships fought with a combination of advanced technology and primitive savagery that shocked both sides. They used tactics that other species considered impossible or insane, turning their own vessels into weapons when necessary. Captain Morrison's Horizon led a squadron of converted merchant ships in a flanking maneuver that took the Zephyrians completely by surprise. Instead of engaging the enemy fleet directly, Jake's ships attacked the orbital platforms that supported Zerion Prime's shields. Chief Collins had modified their weapons to create a resonance cascade that brought down the entire defensive grid. In less than 10 minutes, Lieutenant Wright, now promoted to commander, coordinated the fleet's targeting systems with inhuman precision. She had studied every Zephyrian ship design, every weakness in their armor, every flaw in their tactical doctrine. Her recommendations turned what should have been a costly battle into a systematic dismantling of enemy forces. Commander Bell's ground troops landed on Zerion Prime's surface while the space battle raged overhead. They fought through atmospheric conditions that would have killed most other species, using their environmental suits to operate in the moon's toxic environment. Zephyrian ground forces, equipped for combat in standard conditions, found themselves facing enemies who thrived in hostile environments. The battle lasted 36 hours. When it was over, Zerion Prime was a burning ruin, its military installations destroyed and its fleet scattered. The Zephyrians had lost their primary command center, their main fleet base, and their military academy. More importantly, they had lost the illusion that they were the dominant military power in the galaxy. Admiral Hayes stood in the wreckage of the Zephyrian command center, surrounded by her officers. The fortress that had intimidated the galaxy for centuries was now nothing more than twisted metal and broken stone. Emergen. 5 years had passed since the Zephyrian War ended with humanity's complete victory. The galaxy had settled into a new normal, one where human colonies were never attacked. Human merchant ships were never searched without permission, and human diplomats spoke with the quiet authority of a species that had proven its strength. Jake Morrison sat in his ready room aboard the UES Horizon, now serving as a flagship for the Outer Rim Patrol Fleet. The ship had been converted back to its peaceful exploration role, but the weapon systems remained hidden beneath its hull. Jake himself had returned to the calm demeanor of a peaceful explorer, but everyone who met him could sense the steel beneath the surface. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. The face of Governor Patricia Walsh appeared on his screen, calling from the rebuilt colony of New Haven. Behind her, Jake could see green fields and new buildings, a testament to human resilience and determination. Captain Morrison, thank you for taking my call. I wanted to personally invite you and your crew to the dedication ceremony for the New Haven Memorial next week. It wouldn't be the same without the people who helped us rebuild. Jake smiled, remembering the woman he had pulled from the wreckage 5 years ago. She had lost her husband and 2 children in the Zephyrian attack, but had chosen to stay and help rebuild the colony rather than flee to safer worlds. Her courage had inspired thousands of other survivors to do the same. We'll be honored, too. Attend, Governor. How is the reconstruction progressing? Better than we hoped, Patricia replied, her voice filled with quiet pride. "The new population is approaching 60,000, and we're already producing food for 12 different worlds. But more than that, we've become a symbol. People from across the galaxy come here to see what humans can build after experiencing the worst that others can do to us." This was the new reality that had emerged from the ashes of the Zephyrian War. Humanity had not used their military victory to become conquerors or bullies. Instead, they had returned to their role as helpers and builders, but now they did so from a position of unquestioned strength. Jake's communication console buzzed again. This time, the caller was Ambassador Claire Davis, speaking from the Federation. Council chambers on Prima. The diplomatic corps had grown significantly since the war, as every major power in the galaxy now sought closer relationships with humanity. "Jake, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. I wanted to give you advance notice about tomorrow's council session. The Altarian Republic is formally requesting human mediation in their border dispute with the Centauri Alliance." Jake raised an eyebrow. The Altarians and Centaurians had been fighting over 3 star systems for almost a century. Their conflict was one of the oldest unsolved problems in Federation politics. What makes them think we can succeed where others have failed? Claire's smile was both warm and cold at the same time. Because they're terrified of what might happen if they ask us to choose sides instead of mediate. The galaxy has learned that it's much safer to accept human arbitration than to risk human intervention. This was perhaps the most important change that had occurred since the war. Humanity's reputation for fairness and justice had been enhanced, rather than damaged by their display of military power. Other species understood that humans could destroy them if they chose to, which made human promises of peace and protection infinitely more valuable. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from Admiral Hayes, now serving as the Chief of Fleet Operations from her headquarters on Earth. Her face appeared on the screen with the calm authority that had become her trademark since the war. "Jake, we're receiving reports of pirate activity in the Outer Rim. 3 merchant vessels have been attacked in the past week. The pirates appear to be using modified Zephyrian ships and tactics." Jake felt something shift in his expression, a coldness that his crew had learned to recognize. "Any casualties, Admiral?" 2 dead, 15 injured. The pirates have been careful to avoid human targets so far, but that may just be a matter of time. The irony was not lost on Jake. The complete defeat of the Zephyrian military had created a power vacuum in several regions, leading to increased pirate activity. Most of the pirates were former Zephyrian military personnel who had refused to accept their government's surrender and had turned to raiding instead. "I'll take the horizon and investigate. Do we have any intelligence on their base of operations?" Admiral Hayes nodded. "Long-range sensors have detected unusual activity in the Vega Nebula. It's possible they're using the nebula's interference to hide their base. Jake, I want you to remember that these aren't regular pirates. They're trained military personnel with advanced weapons. Be careful." Jake's smile was not pleasant. "Admiral, they're about to learn the same lesson their government learned 5 years ago. Humans remember our friends, and we remember our enemies." 3 days later, the Horizon entered the Vega Nebula with a small task force of 6 ships. The nebula's dense gases and electromagnetic interference made sensors nearly useless, forcing the human ships to navigate by careful calculation and intuition. Chief Collins, still serving as the Horizon's chief engineer, had modified their sensors to penetrate the nebula's interference. His gentle hands worked with the same precision that had once fixed water purifiers, but now they tracked pirates through cosmic gas clouds. "Captain, I'm detecting energy signatures consistent with a hidden base about 2 million kilometers ahead. The readings suggest at least 15 ships, possibly more." Lieutenant Commander Wright, promoted after her exemplary service during the war, studied the tactical display with the cold calculation that had made her famous throughout the fleet. "Captain, the formation suggests they're using standard Zephyrian defensive patterns. They've probably converted asteroid mining platforms into weapons platforms." Jake nodded. This was exactly what human intelligence had predicted. Former Zephyrian. Military personnel would naturally fall back on tactics and strategies they understood, even in their new role as pirates. All ships, prepare for combat operations. Remember, these are criminals who prey on innocent merchants. They've chosen their path, and now they'll face the consequences. The battle that followed was brief and decisive. The pirates, despite their military training and advanced weapons, had made the same mistake as their former government. They had underestimated human adaptability and determination. The Horizon's crew fought with the same cold efficiency they had demonstrated during the war, but now their actions carried the additional weight of justice. These weren't soldiers fighting for their homeland. They were criminals who had chosen to prey on the innocent. When the fighting ended, the pirate base was destroyed and their fleet was scattered. The surviving pirates were taken prisoner and would face trial under Federation law. More importantly, word of the victory would spread throughout the criminal underworld, reminding everyone that human protection extended beyond human colonies. Jake stood on the bridge of the Horizon as his crew processed the aftermath of the battle. Around him, officers who had once been peaceful explorers worked with the quiet competence of veterans. They had adapted to their role as protectors of galactic peace, just as they had once adapted to be diplomats and helpers. "Captain," said Collins from his engineering station, "we're receiving a transmission from the merchant vessel Aurora. They want to thank us for eliminating the pirate threat." Jake smiled, remembering why humanity had chosen to be protectors. "In the first place, tell them they're welcome. Remind them that human ships patrol these lanes regularly, so they can travel safely." This was the new reality that humanity had created. They were no longer the gentle giants who relied on others for protection. They were the guarantors of peace in their region of the galaxy, maintaining order through the certain knowledge that aggression against the innocent would be met with swift and decisive response. Later that day, Jake received a message from a young cadet serving on one of the new training ships. The cadet, fresh from the academy, asked about the stories that veterans told about the early days of human spaceflight, when they had been known for their kindness rather than their strength. Jake looked out at the stars, thinking about the journey that had brought humanity to this point. When he replied, his voice carried the wisdom of someone who had witnessed the transformation of his entire species. "We never wanted to be feared, cadet. We wanted to be trusted. But sometimes, to protect trust, you have to be willing to break it. The galaxy is safer now because they know we can be monsters. And because they know we choose not to be." The message ended, but Jake continued to stare out at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien parents were telling their children stories about the day the Deathworlders turned ruthless. These stories served as both warning and comfort. Warning to those who might threaten the innocent, and comfort to those under human protection. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength was never their capacity for violence, but their ability to choose when to use it. They had proven that they could be gentle explorers, patient diplomats, ruthless warriors, and just protectors, adapting to whatever role the situation required. And in the rebuilt colony of New Haven, where children played in gardens planted over the graves of the dead, a memorial stood with a simple inscription: